Welcome to the Motivated Martial Arts Podcast. Your hosts, Jackson White and Gavin Cook, have been friends and Taekwondo training partners for over 40 years. This podcast will bring you a mixture of their life stories, martial arts, and business experiences to motivate you in life and throughout your martial arts journey. Adding in a mixture of inspiring interviews and some of the best traditional martial artists around today. So over to your hosts, the Motivated Martial Artists.
Welcome to the Motivated Martial Artists podcast with myself, Gavin Cook.
And me, Jackson White.
And today we've got another real treat. We've got a gentleman who's been doing Taekwondo for 41 years, is a 7th degree black belt, and one of the very few Taekwondo practitioners to be able to successfully cross over between ITF and the WTF styles with a international career over 10 years. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Ralph Minott. Hello, Ralph.
Hi, guys. Good to speak to you. Everybody's okay?
Yeah, fantastic. Great to have you on the show today, Ralph. I'm going to pass you over to Jackson, who's got the first question lined up for you, but looking forward to hearing some awesome stories. So over to you, Jackie.
Yeah, hey, Ralph. Good to hear from you.
Yeah, Jackie, good to speak to you.
Okay, so I'll kick off with the first question. And I know, we do this pretty much every interview. Really want to understand and give us a bit of an insight into your early life, your childhood. How did you get on at school? And what led you into martial arts?
Yeah, cool. We were children of first generation West Indies parents who came to Britain. The classic Windrush, I think they describe them these days. My parents came over in the 50s, and your old man will talk about how it all set up, and it was our grandparents came, they bought property, and then they let their children come over, they found somewhere for them to live, and that's how it happened, really. And I was born in the middle of a industrial centre of Nottingham, the two up, two down terrace house, what you'd call the slums of the 50s and 60s. And so, quite a very basic life that we loved because it was very urban, and, we grew up in that environment, went to normal schools, and the Minotts were always seen as nice kids. Our parents were very studious, so we were expected to work hard at school, and we were always caught out by the influence of fabulous English kids that we grew up and became our mates. And massive ethnic diversity, because the Indian people were coming over as well. Indians and Pakistan were coming over, the early people. So we had a real mix of friends. I went to school, and with the Minotts were all in a grammar stream, but probably never really fulfilled their potential. None of us ever passed our 11 plus. We couldn't believe why, and that was always something that annoyed my mum and dad. My mum and dad split up at the age of 3 years of age. So from 3 years of age upwards, we had a mother who worked full time. She was a nurse, and she was bringing up 4 kids, and so we just worked hard looking after the home and my mum as we grew up. And from the age of 13, I was just desperate to be a quantity surveyor, which just came out of the blue in those good old days where you're at school and you're trying to think of something to do so that the careers guy didn't pick on you. And I thought quantity surveying sounded really good. I saw it on a piece of paper, and I said quantity surveying. This guy never picked on me after that again, so I thought it must be a good thing to do if you were picking on me. And I just fell in love with it. And, quantity surveying was the thing that I ended up chasing. So when I went through my O-levels as it was, and didn't really do as well as I should have done, but as soon as I didn't and thought, hey, I might not make it as a quantity surveyor, I just worked like a nutter. After that, from 16 through to 18, just studying every day that God sends, really, and made it to Trent Polytechnic, as it was then, to study a Bachelor of Science in Quantity Surveying. In those days, on a Wednesday afternoon, I've got my oldest lad, he's 19, he's studying architecture at Newcastle. He's got a Wednesday afternoon where he does nothing, and I think Wednesday afternoon is historically at university a time where there's no lectures, you just do something. And I always remember at school there was a kid that we used to call Scooby-Doo who did Waterloo, and he always used to be doing moves on everybody. And, so we had a fascination about martial arts just from that. And then in the 70s, when I was 16, it was a Kung Fu movie thing, so we used to go all-night Kung Fu movies. And, Enter the Dragon came out, Bruce Lee was a big thing. So I think everybody kind of loved martial arts, but only a few people did it. And when I went to Trent, I thought, well, actually, I'm going to have a go at some martial arts. I had an old pal called Andy Lamb, and he was a WTF guy. I didn't know he did WTF, he did Taekwondo. He lived next door to one of my mates. And I thought, well, I ain't going to do Taekwondo, but if there's this Waterloo thing that I heard about, I'll have a go at it. So Freshers Week, I go to the Waterloo stand, and there's like nobody there. And then I see that in the hall there was a Taekwondo stand. I go to the Taekwondo stand, and it was like mad full of people. So I thought, oh no, I'm going to have to do Taekwondo. So I just joined the Taekwondo club. And, you know, I have this thing that, you know, I genuinely believe in, that everybody is great at something, but very few of us find it.
Yeah.
And if you find that thing that you're great at and you enjoy it, you know, all the best, you can really make something out of it. And, you know, I was one of these kids who at school, in a very sporting school, everybody was great at everything and I wasn't. You know, I was the last person to be fit for basketball. I had to go cross country because nobody else wanted to do it. I had to do butterfly in the gala because nobody else could swim butterfly. You know, everything that everybody was rubbish at, I had to do because it was hard. Never able to play football. Everybody could play football, but everybody in our school was a county player or a Notts Forest player. So I never managed to get on a football team. Played in the cricket team, had to go wickets while all these Asian fast bowlers used to be knocking the ball down and out. So, you know, I was always on the raw end of sport. Never great.
Do you know what?
And I
Do you know what, Ralph?
and I quite liked it.
You know what? That sounds like Gavin. Even now, he struggles to get picked for tag team.
He's always been an unsung hero, hasn't he, on the ring? That guy that you think, crikey, he's better than he looks.
I tell you, it was Paul Dombiel in the 91 that finished me off, Ralph, I think.
What a revelation he was, that.
Yeah.
What a revelation.
Yeah, not when you.
So, you know, I got into Taekwondo and I just did it, really. And I just trained, loved the traditional aspect of it. Never competed in our club. That was it. And, you know, 3 years, I was at Trent for 4 years with a year out in industry. And in the fourth, when I went back in the third year, I got my black belt. And that was it, really. After my black belt, my instructor, there was an instructor who ran the club called Tony Vora, who's a ninth dan WTF guy, probably one of the, I think there's two ninth dan true British Taekwondoists through WTF who come through, a guy called Frank Massa, I think a London guy, and this guy, Tony Vora, two of the highest ranking. You know, it's very technical, you know, all the splits and all that, you know, very technical kicker. So he was a very technical trainer, but he wasn't really a fighter, even though he had done, he had the trial for England. He wasn't really a classic fighter. So I never really learned to fight until after I got my black belt.
Can you remember the first competition that you went to?
Yeah, when I got my black belt, I used to train 3 times a week at Trent, anyway, and I used to train twice a week at the Central Nottingham WTF Club, which was run by a guy called Dave Hetherington. And Dave Hetherington, he was one of these classic Taekwondo guys who learned in the army, came to Britain with his black belt, and they learned Taekwondo in Singapore. And when he came to Britain with his black belt, Ricky Harvard arrived in Britain and was teaching ITF Taekwondo. And this guy's instructor in Singapore was a higher ranking guy than Ricky R. So he wasn't going to train with Ricky R, this guy. So he basically taught WTF Taekwondo in Nottingham, and he was effectively Tony Vora's instructor who ran the Trent club.
Right.
And when I got my yellow or green belt, I went to this club as well as training at Trent. And at this club, it was just classic hard man Taekwondo, only blokes, all nutters, and you had to spar there, and there was no equipment, and it was WTF sparring. But what I didn't know was he did ITF patterns because he came from the ITF, but they were just patterns to me. I didn't know there was any difference. I just knew that he sparred without equipment, no punching to the face, and he did these patterns, Chonji through to Chung Moo. So after I got my black belt, he said we should try a karate competition and see how you fare. And we went to the Karate Open British Championships at Crystal Palace, which is karate points, got wasted. And then my next tournament was, what I didn't know, was a selection championships, WTF, for the Ecuador World Championships in 82, February 82 they were. And I fought Bantamweight, which was just the weight I was when I turned up at the day. didn't know I was a bantamweight, which was under 58 those days. And I just thought, after a few fights in those days, everything was 1 point. Kick to the head was 1 point. Kick to the body was 1 point. You didn't get a point unless the body moved or the head moved. Unless you just about knocked somebody out in WTF, you just didn't get a point. And, I'm fighting in bantamweight, and I'm like dropping people with body kicks and thinking, actually, this is dead easy. People are kicking me, it's hard, but I'm kicking them and they're dropping. And I thought, actually, this is quite easy. And then I got to the semi-finals of this tournament and thought the guy who I didn't know was the British team bantamweight, a guy called Sean Daly, very technical fighter from the Brotherhood London team, great team of fighters. And then we ended up in a draw, and the referee made the decision, gave him the fight after the draw. And I didn't think anything of it. I didn't know it was a selection championships. I didn't know anything. And I came out of that with this little rubbish medal, quite enjoyed it. And somebody said, well, if you just don't know how close you were to being picked to fight for Britain, and I thought, wait, tell you what, I just enjoyed it. Then after that, I just wanted to fight. And because my club didn't fight, I got back to Nottingham and said, look, guys, my mates, I want to fight. I've got to find ways of fighting. And there was a guy in Mansfield called Ray Lightfoot, who was the English team middleweight, minor, and he used to just be a fighter. And in Mansfield, which was a rural mining town, everything they did was fight. And so I used to go to Mansfield and train 2 or 3 times a week and just train with this guy. He was rock hard. And I just fought. And in 82, I won the British Championships in WTF as a bantamweight. And from then onwards, I was just like winning 58 kilo bantamweight. That was my weight. And just enjoying it. First European medal was 84. I got bronze in the Dutch Open. And so, I was just enjoying fighting. And it really suited me, and I was a natural 8 stone 12 guy, so it was perfect.
When did you cross over into ITF then, Mal?
Well, what happened was in '82. So I got black belt in '81. '82, I got as British champion, and I saw an advert for a UKTA Taekwondo in Nottingham, up the road from where I was training. So I thought, go along to this demo. I went along to this demo, and a guy called Tom Zuza, who was like he was Bob Harvey's right-hand man. Bob Harvey used to run Notts and Derby back in those days. And you had Tom Zuza, and his black belts, Brian Tarnsworth, Master Tarnsworth was one of his black belts, Mick Gregory, Isaac Harry, people like that. And so I go to this demo, and they're doing the same patterns as I am. I'm thinking, well, how can this be the same as me? Because they're doing patterns, they then put the sparring equipment on, they're punching each other in the face, no head guards, gloves and boots, really quick. But nobody's getting knocked out, but it just looked fantastic. And then they put equipment down, one-step sparring was just like deadly. And then they started breaking, and it was just like a demolition derby, and anybody can remember Bob Harvey used to get people for a house break in the palm, and somebody was holding a house break, hand on, and then he'd scoop the top off a house brick with a knife and inward strike, and I thought, I've never seen anything, even on telly, even in a kung fu movie, you'd never seen anything like that. So I went up to the guy, Tom Zeus, and I said, look, I'm a black belt in Taekwondo, I've never seen anything like this, can I train? And he said, well, what do you do? And I said, I do WTF. And he said, well, as long as you get a license, respect, buy uniform, and don't do your WTF in my club, you can train. So that was it. I was training 3 days a week, WTF, 2 days a week, UKTA as it was then. And then after the Nottingham 83 British champs, where I fought in that, got battered. Just getting used to being punched in the face was just something I quite liked, because it was hard, it was different, and it was great training. And then the TAGB became formed, UKTA Derby moved over probably 6 months later, but I was training, so I didn't really see much of that. I was just training, and there was another kid I trained with, WTF kid, who'd opened a club under Tom Zeus as well at that time. And so that was it, I was just training. And so that was where my introduction to UKTA, TAGB, and then I started fighting every TAGB tournament. But at the same time, I was doing WTF. So I was TAGB squad training Saturday, WTF training Sunday, and nobody really knew that much about it because I'd just trained.
Yeah.
And my mates who were WTF, they had a few tournaments in TAGB, and they stuck around till about 85, 86 fighting.
Okay.
And in the end, they kind of dropped off, and I kept going.
So I suppose that leads towards obviously the 1988 Olympic Championships in Seoul. I mean, obviously, we'd love to hear all about that.
Yeah, I mean, really interesting because in '88 that was in Seoul, so the Koreans were able to pick their national sport as a sport.
Yeah.
And the demonstration sports, as they call them, what happens with those is you basically fight as normal, medals as normal, but the medals don't go on the overall medal tally. In those days, you had 8 weights men, 8 weights women, and the only weights that were picked in Britain were the 4 weights which had been the most successful in international competition that the World Taekwondo Federation had worked out. And in Britain, we had bantamweight, my weight was picked. The weight below that, which was flyweight, was picked. The welterweight was picked, and middleweight was picked. Actually, at that time, the only British person who'd got a world championship medal historically was a welterweight, and he didn't get picked, and so that weight wasn't picked. And this guy Lindsay was a guy called Lindsay Lawrence, who's probably, if not the greatest historic WTF fighter in Britain in terms of what he's achieved at a world championship. His weight wasn't picked, so we knew the weights that were picked, and really they just had to pick the fighter that was be at that weight. So in '86 it was announced, and you've got to think, by '86 I was pretty much established as a regular turning up at TAGB tournaments.
Yeah.
In '83, '84, Kenny Walton saw me to tournament and said, "You need to come to squad training." I turned at squad training. He kind of really took me under his wing and said, "Look," and introduced the people, made me feel comfortable. Even knowing I did WTF, he just said, "Look, you don't need to talk about that. You just need to put your head down and train." And when I got squad training, did a bit of training, Dave Oliver said to me, "Hey, look, you need to come to Warwick if you can make it, and we'll teach you how to fight points." So I used to go to Warwick Youth Club on a Friday and fight points. I used to go to squad training on a Saturday, and I used to have a young Jackie, I can remember that well.
Yeah.
A young boy that we used to kick about the place.
Yeah, thanks for that, Ralph. You and the rest of the bantam lightweights.
And then Sunday I was back into WTF, and in the week I was like training twice a day, morning and night, trying to split between the two, trying to do my bag work and training, trying to understand how to fight points, front leg, hands, and then switching off and going back leg, because WTF in those days was all about back leg power, back leg spins and stuff like that. So it was, my life was Taekwondo, 7 days a week, Taekwondo, trying to work out the different systems. And so they announced the Olympic Games '86, and they said we're going to have 4 selection championships. These 4 weights are going to be the weights, the top fighters. And at the time at Bantamweight, I had a guy that Tom Yan Shin used to be a UKTA top instructor, but he moved us to WTF in Manchester, and Tom Yan Shin had some ex-UKTA fighters, and a guy called Mark Richardson was his boy at Bantamweight, and Mark Richardson at Bantamweight, who was like awesome Bantamweight fighter, and he had a guy in welterweight who was deadly, and this guy was just the guy to beat, and me and him used to have some dust-ups, and he was far more technical than me, but clearly I had the ability of fighting under Ray Lightfoot, and power was my thing, movement, power and speed. So, it was a real match-up with a really technical guy against a guy less technical but a bit more durability. And he won one, I won one, he got injured in one, which I then got a second place in. And then the final event, which was late '87, early '88, we fought, and whoever won that would have gone, because if he'd have won, yes, okay, the points might have still be, if I came second, I might have had overall points, but there's no way the WTF then knew I was training in TAGB and fighting in TAGB all the time. They'd have picked me.
Right, yeah.
And I beat him in the tournament. And when I beat him, that was it. I was going. And I just thought, well, what does that mean? And then you get a letter from the British Olympic Association saying, "Dear so-and-so, you've been picked to go to the Olympics. Turn up at Wandsworth," as it was then, "and get your gear." I turn up at Wandsworth and somebody gives me a suitcase, says, "Like, go around the back." I go into the back room, and you've got a a shed the size of an air hangar, and it's just full of gear. And I fill my suitcase with tracksuits, suits, blazers, you name it. Get back to Nottingham, get to see my mum and say, "Mum, you're not going to believe what's in this cage." Open the cage. It starts becoming real, doesn't it?
Yeah, I bet.
And then, I get on the plane, and you're on a jumbo jet that's full of British people.
So who were some of the athletes on that plane to Seoul?
So
the big personalities.
With the Taekwondo team, we were in the jumbo jet. We were in the bubble, the jumbo jet. So we were with the 3-day eventers. So you had people like Virginia Lang and Mark Phillips, who married Princess Anne. Okay. That was that team. So there was us and them up there, and you had. It was after Seb Crow. So the sprint, the middle distance were what's his name? Steve Crown.
Yeah.
And Peter Elliott with the 1500 metre and 800 metre runners. Yeah. The sprinters were Linford Christie, the guy from Birmingham. So you had guys like that on the team. And then, these guys are sat on the plane playing cars next to you. And it's totally surreal.
Yeah. Pinch yourself moment, was it?
You get to the village, and the Olympic Village in Seoul. Imagine walking around Seoul with an ID card that's got Taekwondo on, and literally being a celebrity, because that was their sport.
Yeah.
So you go to a restaurant, and people would, you didn't have to buy any food because they'd give you the food for free, and you go into a shop and people would start doing patterns in front of you. It was just
awesome,
off the scale. And that for me, the Olympic experience was as impressive as the competition, which had like 7,000 spectators. But the experience of getting up in the breakfast meeting in the village, going to sit at breakfast. I used to sit at breakfast next to a guy called Calvin Smith. He used to sit at the same seat every day at breakfast. I used to sit at the same seat with my mate, who was the coach, a guy called Gavin from Doncaster, fabulous coach, great mate. We used to go to breakfast together. We sit next to Calvin Smith, who was the world record holder at the time. And I'd sit there, and this guy was quiet. You say hello, how you doing? What's your sport? All that. And, then you'd hear the loud noise come in the room, and you've got like Linford Christie and all the Brits had come in, and I'm sitting there thinking, hang on a second, you guys ain't world champions. This guy's like the man.
Yeah.
And, they were the champs where Daley Thompson was top guy, and, Carl Lewis was the guy that ended up the guy when Ben Johnson won and then got drug banned and got his medal stripped off him. They were the games to be at.
Yeah, sounds absolutely awesome. Stuff of dreams.
Yeah, totally, absolutely, totally. Just, for me, you can't, it's that thing where, being an Olympian is something that very few people get. And I'm thinking to myself, look, I'm just a normal St. Anne's Nottingham boy who through Taekwondo has got me, 5,000 miles away in an Olympic Games. It's just like not real. So you think about what the theatre of dreams of Taekwondo is making that. Amazing.
Where'd you go from that?
So, well, I think what happened really was, if you remember, that was the Olympic Games were late in '88, so they were September the 17th through to October the 2nd. And I flew out at the beginning of September. I was there for nearly 4 weeks. But in the July of '88, that was our first Open World Championships.
Okay.
And I'd seen those advertised, and obviously I was at squad and they were talking about it. And if you think the team then was a team of middle and heavyweights, the big guys fought. Jackie might have made the team, but they were the big guys who fought in that team. So it wasn't really a team event for people like me. We didn't come into a weighted team until the 91 World Championships.
Yeah.
So, I thought, well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to enter this tournament just because of good fitness. So I was training for that, just for fitness, really, not because the Olympic Games was my thing. And so July I entered the Open World Championships, and for under 57, that was the low category for me, and I had to be for 2 years weighed every week at WTF squad on the Sunday, and I had to be 58 to stay in the WTF team. So I knew I was under 58 and fought under 57, made it to the final, lost to the Dutch guy. And, so if I think about fights that I should have won that I really beat myself up about, even now, 30 years on, I beat myself up about losing that fight. But I wasn't that bothered then because Olympics was the thing I was aiming for. But, I came back for the Olympic Games And I was, I went out in the quarterfinals, had a great time, superb experience, but I was absolutely despondent about, as a team, how poor we were, not very together. Our coaching system was seemed so far behind. We just didn't have our act together back then as a team, and I didn't really see it. And that was probably my third or fourth international, but I saw it the worst in that environment. And I was this is my thing really, I'm enjoying the TAGB, I'm going to try a bit harder to get in TAGB. I've done all right in that World Championship. Who knows? I might be able to make it. And, as it was, literally 2 weeks after I came back, Dave Oliver rang me and he just said, Ralph, Dave Oliver, just giving you a call. You've got the highest places at under 57. We're taking a team to Germany to fight next week. Do you want to come? I was like, yeah, I'll come. So I'll just get to Birmingham Airport. And that was it. So, I'm a WTF guy. Everywhere you go, you have to buy your own stuff, buy your own kit, fill your bag with your medicine, your plasters, your freeze spray, the lot. I turned up at the airport and Dave's chucking suits at me, tracksuit, here's your suit, here's your tracksuit. I've got a bag full of kit, and then I've got a bag full of kit that Dave's given me. I'm thinking, this ain't real. I'm not used to this. I've had 4 years of international in WTF. I've come here, first international. The guy sees me on a Friday night at Warwick, and he's given me all this gear. Here I am. And you got Kenny Walton was the team captain, Kim Stones, it was a wicked team.
Yeah, great team.
And they were just great fun. Nobody was on a pedestal. Everybody had the mickey taken out of them from the minute they flew out. It was just wonderful. And the minute I got there, that was it. I wasn't going to do WTF again, so that was it. I stopped then. And I was just TAGB right through then.
Brilliant.
And that was it, really. And I loved it. I loved the training. It was hard. And the guys were just great. Camaraderie was just incredible.
One of the highlights.
That was my journey.
Yeah, so one of the highlights for me, Ralph, was watching you in the team final in the 1991 World Championships. There was you and there was Mark Weir and there was I can't remember who it was against, but I remember the crowd. It was absolutely insane. And I'm sure you got picked for the tiebreak, I think, didn't you?
Yeah, the thing was, for me, that was a tournament where I thought it was mine. And in the individuals, I got beaten the second round, trying something that was a WTF move on a Dutch guy who was just so smart. And I spun there, I went for back hit, he stood back, hit me with a big chaggy underneath, and that was it. I thought, Ralph, you idiot, you should have been dropping your hands on this bloke. And I was so angry. And when I got in the team, I was like a man possessed,
Had it all to prove.
And every fight, I was like running all over people. But I ended up having to fight Stefan Tapilato and fight off. Okay, and he fought the Dutch fought the Welsh in the fight before. And he'd done a jumping back kick on Rodney Burnett and broke his arm. And so I was like, this guy is dangerous. And nobody in TAGB, even internationally, I'd seen anybody in my weight beat this guy. Yeah. And I so badly wanted to beat him, and Dave, what Dave's like. Dave's going to go, Ralph, this is your time. You've got to beat him.
Did you beat him?
And this guy beat me.
Oh, no.
One of the greatest fights I've ever had was that fight.
I remember the crowd. I remember sat there, and I was a 15-year-old, 16-year-old. I just moved up into the senior division, and I remember sat there watching that final. And the crowd was like, Ralphie Miller, Ralphie Miller. I can still remember the cheers. But I remember the whole place was going crazy. Anyone that was at that competition will remember it. It was amazing.
Yeah, it was awesome. And, for me, the great thing about that tournament, we won as a team, but we were the B team. And we beat the A team in the semis.
Okay.
And so, the B team was me, Mark Ware, Mark Ogborn. So we were the guys that shouldn't have won. The main team was like Saul, Kenny, Kim, Roger, that was the team. Yeah. And we beat, and they had Lee Charles was a lightweight. So, my real challenge in the TAGB has really been about being, over 6 years, so many lightweights who were unbelievable. Totally unbelievable. And this guy, Lee Charles, he had left and right leg, he had unbelievable flexibility, guy from Bristol, great speed, tall, movement, everything. And to beat the guy was just like unheard of. It was just so difficult to beat him. But it was one of those championships where you just know that if anybody's going to beat you, they had to be unbelievable in that team, and we were just great. So we beat them in the semis, and ended up in the final against the Dutch and beat them. Yeah. So it was the championship I will always remember because we were the underdogs.
But that
we won it.
That highlights though back then the strength in depth that the TAGB had. There were 3 or 4, maybe 5 fighters at each weight.
It was not only strength in depth, Jackie. It was a real belief that you were part of a team. And I used to go to internationals, and Dave used to say, "I'm going to pick the team on the day." And like 3 lightweight would turn up. We'd go into the room. We'd all be sat there, 3 lightweights, and he'd go, "Right, I've looked at the other teams at the rear. I've looked at the makeup. Ron, you're fighting lightweight." That would be it. Me and Dave Shepp or whoever it was. Richard Brown wasn't my time, but Lee Chaya was my time. Tariq was my time. We wouldn't say, "Oh, I'm really disappointed." We would be over there straight away, giving our lightweight person who was picked the pat on the back and getting behind him. And if you were picked, everybody was behind you. It wasn't, people didn't get disgruntled because they didn't get picked. Dave had everybody. He had 3 or 4 people at each weight, and you understood that he picked the person on form, the person who'd done the training, and the person he thought was going to be his best fighter for that event. And it was such a wonderful time of depth in the TAGB. And, I take my hat off to Kenny over the last 10 years in how we had to mould and work with a different set of people, because then you had so much quality in depth.
Yeah, no, I'd agree.
But less so in the women, but in the men's.
Okay then, Ralph. So that's your Taekwondo. So what else do you get up to outside of martial arts and Taekwondo?
I mean, for me, Taekwondo has always been the thing that I loved after surveying and property. At 13 years of age, I said, I want to be a quantity surveyor. I became a quantity surveyor. Managed to get into development. Through a recession, I lost my job, and I was working 3 days a week. So 1991, it was even better. Those World Championships at a time where I was only working 3 days. So I was able to train up in Doncaster with Kenny 2 days a week as well. So, we were training all the time. But I loved my job, and I ended up coming out of that and getting into development. Development is my skill, which is more about the whole of property planning, negotiating deals, as well as cost and construction, all the management projects. So that's my skill. And I ended up in 1998 joining with 4 other people. We started a children's day nursery business. I was the property director in the business. We put our money in together, raised £1 million, and then went into the market, raised another 90 million quid, and started a children's day nursery business, which people might remember called Leapfrog Day Nursery.
Yeah.
And between 98 and 2004, you would have had Leapfrog Day Nurseries all over Britain. We built 36 of those nurseries. I was the guy that did the site buying, doing the deals, building the units. And then we sold that business in 2004 to an education business called North Anglia Education, which was a public listed education business. And they then took us 5 people who were the founders. We had to go there for 6 months before we could escape. But I decided to stay, and I stayed, and they made me the group property director. So I looked after everything in their business, which was international schools in 5 or 6 countries. And then we had 110 day nurseries across Britain, and I managed that portfolio. So I loved property, and getting to my classes was really important, but property was my first thing, really. I loved the job. And then I left that in 2007 because essentially we sold our nursery business and decided we'd go to international schools, key business, where we were making real money teaching British education. And my chief exec wanted me to move to Singapore. And by which time I had very young kids who didn't see much of me because I was either teaching or working. I just couldn't really justify moving the family out of the country. So I ended up working and moving to a business in Birmingham called Calthorpe Estate, which is a very old, 300-year-old family business. And they own half of Birmingham, the best bits. They own the university, the hospital, the cricket ground, some of the best resi. And my job there is regeneration, redevelopment, taking land back into the estate and making it something else. And, that's what I love. So I never really felt the need or the desire to be a full-time instructor. But, I still think one day, before I keel it,
One day, go on, come on, Ralph. One day.
That's my vision.
Okay. I mean, it's funny because me and Jackie, obviously, we've known each other a long time. We're always ringing each other up, coming up with business ideas, and obviously, we talked about doing this podcast, and how I think there's definitely a crossover between martial arts and entrepreneuriorship. I mean, I don't know how martial arts has helped you with your business career. If any of the decisions you've made might have been influenced by the fact that you've got that that determination and your martial arts background.
Yeah, I think there is absolutely spot on, Gav. There's a definite, even simple things. I say to people that I stand in front of a class every week and I talk about something that I know a bit about. And because I know a bit about it and I think I'm good at it, I project in a really informed and entertaining way something that I know about. I believe that in your job, if you apply the same principles, you can do the same. In my job, I couldn't care less whether I'm standing in front of 10 people or 1,000 people talking about poverty, because it's a topic I know about. Because I've learnt that skill in Taekwondo, I'm good at that. I'm great at standing in front of people, presenting. I have no issue with that at all. And dealing with people, because we, as instructors, we deal with the public all the time. We have to engage with the public. We have to make them feel comfortable. We have to sell to them. We have to sell a good and safe way of learning Taekwondo to them. They have to bestow their most important person upon you to care for them. You've got to be somebody that you can give somebody the impression of trust.
Yeah, most definitely.
And in business, you have to do the same.
Yeah.
In business, if you can engage with somebody quickly, they can feel comfortable. And all of those skills that I've only learned through Taekwondo, I use every day of the week. It works.
It's all transferable.
And I comfortably do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Transferable. Totally transferable.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we were talking in an earlier podcast about, children these days, quite a lot of them, they're not being allowed to fail anything. At school you're all winners and you're all this, where the real world is not like that. And the thing with martial arts is, every time you've got a goal to go for, you've got a belt to go for, and you might get it, you might not, you might fail, but then you pick yourself back up and you go on. And I think when you're involved in the business world, as having built successful businesses, the amount of times you get no's and doors slammed in your face, you've got to have that determination, haven't you, to just keep pushing through it.
Yeah, totally. And that's probably the hardest job with the modern student. When we learnt, it was pass or fail. You didn't question it. Nobody explained it. You waited ages for the result. When it wasn't a good one, you just took it on the chin and moved on.
Yeah.
But it's in the world we're in now, you're dead right, Gav. Children are not used to hearing no. They're not used to having disappointments. And one of our challenges is how we engage them to realise that is just normal. You've got to move on. You've got to press on. The perseverance. Those tenets or indomitable spirit and perseverance are two of the real killers for our kids today.
Yeah. No, I totally agree.
I 100% agree with that, Ralph. I failed. I always remember one of my best friends and I, we took our second dance at the same time. He passed and I failed, no explanation. And you know what? I learned from that, because I knew really I hadn't really prepared. In my heart of hearts, I knew I hadn't really prepared myself. And from everything moving forward, that lesson was, make sure if you're going to attempt something, at least be prepared. Give it your all to be prepared. So I think embracing failure is key. And if you can't learn that in bite-sized chunks, when something significant comes to you and you fail, it can feel like the world has been taken away from you.
Absolutely.
Completely. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely.
So one question before we wrap up, then, Ralph, because we're almost out of time.
Yeah.
What one piece of advice would you give to your younger self, knowing what you know in life now?
I think that I'm blessed with having so many great people who have either been my people. I'm lucky that a lot of people choose Nottingham as a place to come because of Taekwondo, because they want a certain kind of coaching. And whether that, the list of the Gordon Ferns, the Tamsin Clarks, the Alice Today, the Connors, all people who are either mine or not mine. Steph Harris, the people who have gone through and made world champions, made it to the top. And in every case, big thing that I say, set yourself a goal. Don't say this is my goal and just have it in my head. Write it down.
Yeah.
You know, when I look at something that I need to achieve, and I look at it every day, and I measure what I do. You know, I talk to, nobody was probably better than Gordon in terms of people I've coached in saying, look, this is what we've done today. Let's write it down. Let's write down the good, the bad, what you're disappointed in, what you're not disappointed in, what we're going to do next week, what we're going to make a difference in. And, and I do that with my people now. I say, look, if you're serious about it, you set yourself a goal, you write that goal down, and you change, if it's not working, what you need to do to achieve that goal. Let's have goals that are realistic. In work, I do the same. If we're going to have goals for my team, we set goals that are realistic. Let's not set goals that aren't realistic. Let's write them down and let's review them. Every week, let's review them. And I do that because I had nobody coaching me. I had to teach this myself. And it was a hard yard doing something and saying, well, that don't work. Start again. New list. Start again. New list. Start again. And, my fighters today, they have the benefit of me saying, right, we're not going to do that because it ain't working for you. It worked for you. It worked for you. That's your list. Where's your goal based on that list? Let's be realistic, And so that, for me, is setting goals, setting realistic goals, write them down, and then monitor them, review them, be realistic. Find somebody who you can talk to, who can be rational and examine how your goals are going.
Brilliant.
That's
really
great
good
advice.
Really good advice. I think we're coming to the end of the show now, Ralph. I think, obviously, I'm saying to Jackie, I think it would be nice to see if we can maybe get you on again, because it sounds like you've got so many awesome stories to tell. Living on time a little bit today.
Yeah, no problem.
No,
it's great talking to you.
And certainly the things like the goal setting and things like that. I think it's things that people need to hear, because so many people don't. You don't get in the car and just drive, do you? You always have a destination. And I think from someone like you who's achieved so much, it's really good to hear that.
Yeah, and for me, what I think is really challenging is that quite often what people do is particularly people who compete, we're dealing with people mainly who are really interested in goal setting because they are trying to compete and get into a team or achieve something. And one of the hardest things to set people are the physical work you have to do first before that technique that you want to do can be delivered. Whatever it might be. Once you've worked out what somebody's capable of doing, you say, actually, that's what you're capable of doing, but you ain't getting there at least a year. This is what we need to do for the next year before you're going to get there. And it's quite interesting that we're in a world where patience isn't the norm.
No.
People can switch on their computers, have the answer really quickly. The quick answer, it seems to be the obvious one. And our job in Taekwondo is to transfer exactly what we do in traditional Taekwondo. It takes you 3.5 years before you can get your black belt. There's a reason for that. You have to put the patience. And I say to people, it might take 3.5 years to get a black belt, but it probably takes you 6 years to become a great fighter. So this difference... And you've got to put that kind of real concentration in. But once you've got bite-sized goals, you tick them off. You start to see that journey evolving as you move along.
Fantastic. Well, thanks very much for coming on today, Ralph. Appreciate you. You're busy on holiday. Thanks for spending an hour or so from Iron Apple to join us today. I wish I was there with you.
Yeah, you can get back to your sunbathing now, then, Ralph.
Yeah, loved it, guys. Good to talk to you.
Great, lovely. Thank you very much, Ralph. See you again soon.
Speak soon, Ralph. Thank you very much.
Catch you soon.
Okay,
Cheers.
bye for now.
Bye-bye.
I hope you all enjoyed this week's episode of the Motivated Martial Artist podcast. Don't forget to check out our Facebook page and our Facebook group, the Motivated Martial Artist podcast.
And don't forget also the Motivated Martial Artist Instagram page.
So head along for some extra content, interviews and much more.
So until next week, it's bye from Jackson
and Gavin,
the Motivated Martial Artists.